Hey everybody, what's up? Tim here with this week's Faith on Fire. Hope wherever you're at, you are doing awesome and watching God show up in your life in an amazing way. So the title for today's shoot is Learn to Encourage Yourself. And it comes to us from 1 Samuel chapter 30, verse 6. And in this 1 Samuel 30, it's a story about David. And David's one of my favorite characters from the Bible. Learned tons from him. Love David, love the Psalms. Every time I get in there, there's just more and more cool stuff to be found. It's never ending. And in 1 Samuel 30, David is leading the armies of Israel. He's out conquering. He's out taking over lands, and he's increasing the kingdom, and he's doing awesome things. Interesting, while he's away from his city, while he's out away from his family, another army comes in, and they capture the city. They capture his family, they take his wives and his kids, and they burn the city, and they take everything in that city back to their home country. And the city's called Ziklag. And the enemy comes in and totally pillages Ziklag while David and his army is out doing what they're supposed to do, which is conquering and expanding and growing. And when David and his army come back, there is a bad scene that gets unleashed. His army is just absolutely furious, and they're weeping and they're crying and they're angry and they want to kill David. Now, David's in a pretty tough spot, right? Pretty discouraging. You're out doing what you think you're supposed to be doing, and all of a sudden you come back and find everything is blown up and gone sideways and pretty much in as worse a condition as can be. And sometimes we find ourselves in those situations where we're striving for something, we're trying to do something, and things just blow up and they go sideways. Or sometimes we just get ambushed and things go wrong and bad things happen. The question becomes, what do we do when we find ourselves in those really tough, really difficult situations? Well, it's interestingly enough because it says that David took time to encourage himself in the Lord. And I have found, folks, that this is one of the most powerful things that you and I can do. And earlier this week, I had a couple disappointments that just really they just left me just wanting to, I didn't know what to do and I didn't expect them. And it wasn't necessarily anything that I did, but they were just kind of really disheartening. And if I would have dwelled on those and I would have hung into those, they would have been absolutely crushing. But I went back to this passage and I did what David did. I encouraged myself in the Lord. So how do you do that? What did David do? Well, what I found is you gotta plug into God's word, because the more you know God's word, the more you know the promises, the more you know what you can stand on, and the more clear anchors you have that you can rely on. So what you do is you go into God's word and you take that before him in prayer and you say, Lord, your word says that I'm the head and not the tail. Your word says that you'll turn my weeping into dancing, that you'll turn my sorrow into joy. Your word says that you'll never leave me, never forsake me. Your word says that I will excel and prosper wherever I go. Your word says that you don't hold back any good thing from those people who walk uprightly before you. And you start to take God's word before him and you start to pray it and you start to bring it to his attention. Now, you're not reminding God because God hasn't forgotten about his word. We're reminding us. And then after you're done with that, what I found the best thing to do is to get up and take a walk. And then you start to talk to yourself. You say, Tim, you are the head and not the tail. You're on top and not beneath. God says nothing is impossible to you. Nothing's impossible with God. God's word says that when you ask, you'll receive. When you seek, when you'll find. And you start going over whatever scriptures you know, and you start literally talking to yourself. And you say, listen here, mind. Listen here, emotions. Listen here, will. I'm telling you that God's word is the truth in this situation. I'm the head and not the tail. He's going to change my mourning into dancing. I'm above and I'm not beneath. He's expanding me. He's increasing me. His word says that he will make me rich and add no sorrow to it. His word says that he'll expand me 1,000-fold and he'll bless me and he'll do what's promised. So I'm telling you right now, mind, conform to that. I'm telling you, mind, that's what you're going to believe. I'm telling you, emotions, that you're not going to control me, that I'm going to control you. I'm going to bend you. I'm going to shape you. You're going to conform to the will of the word, because the word is the truth in this situation. You start talking to yourself and you start reminding yourself of the promises and you start telling yourself what to think and what to feel, and that will change your disposition. And then if you're so bold, you can start talking to the situation. You can say, let me tell you what situation, whatever it is, sickness, disease, financial difficulties, a goal or a dream you're trying to pursue, whatever the case is, you start talking to it. You say, let me tell you what, I'm the head and not the tail. I'm on top and not beneath. I will lend and not borrow. My enemies come before me and flee before me 7 ways. I'm talking to you, situation. I'm saying I'm above you. I'm saying God's making a way where there seems to be no way. I'm saying it might look like it's impossible, but nothing's impossible with God. I'm saying that nothing's impossible to me when I believe. So you have to bow your knee, situation. You have to conform to the will of the word, because I'm speaking it to you and it is the truth in this situation. And as you do this, You're encouraging yourself in the Lord. You're reminding you of what God says. You're speaking to yourself. You're forming your thoughts, your emotions, and you're even speaking into the situation. And let me tell you something, folks. Our words are some of the most powerful things that we have because our words become reality. And when you put God's word in your mouth and you start to speak it into the situation changes, you changes, everything changes. So that is the way that I encourage myself in the Lord. And I found those situations turned around. Now, sometimes they take longer than others, and sometimes we need to encourage ourselves again and again and again. And the situation might not always turn out the way we want it to, but when we start to apply these principles, I guarantee you will come out on the other side of that situation better, stronger, and a lot of times the situation works out far better than you could ever imagine. So when you walk into a Ziklag, when you walk into like that city that David walked into, when they burnt that city Ziklag to the ground and everything seems hopeless, what do? You encourage yourself in the Lord. You start to remind God of his promises, you start to remind you of your promises, and you start to speak to that situation. And in doing that again and again and again, you have the power to change anything on the planet. And that is awesome because when God's on your side, you are unstoppable. So Tim, with this week's Faith on Fire, hope you found that awesome. Hope you found that helpful. Learn to encourage yourself in the Lord because you can change anything and move it in the direction that God has promised you. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon.